Hello, listeners. My name is Raj Singhal, and welcome to another episode of Breaking Investment Stereotypes. This episode is brought to you by Multiply.co, where we believe that investing is an ignored life skill. Our mission is to create a platform where people can come, learn, share, and collaborate through the right tools. Ultimately, we want your hard earned money to work for you. Here at Breaking Investment Stereotypes, my job is to deconstruct world class investors or wealth managers and a deep dive into their investing journey and habits and how they've broken the stereotypes in a seemingly complex world of investing. I want to give a little guidance on how to use the shows. None of the following should be taken as an investment advice. Please see multiply.co/disclosures for more information. Today, we have a special guest, Abhishek Goyal. Abhishek is not a typical public market investor as we have had so far on our shows. He's an entrepreneur and a successful angel investor himself. Abhishek is a graduate from IIT Kanpur, where he studied computer science. Post that, he worked with Yahoo and Amazon before joining a venture fund called Excel. In there, he then went on to co-found his venture called Traction along with his wife Neha. He has invested in 100 plus startups over the last 13 years, which includes some of the marquee names like Flipkart, Delivery, Rupeek, Gamescraft, Airmeet, etc. So please welcome Abhishek Goyal. Hi Abhishek, thanks for coming to the show.
Thanks, Raj. So glad to be here.
So maybe, since you've been avid investors in some of these private companies, let me begin with that. What do you think of the overall startup ecosystem in India? It's been there for probably about a decade or so now. I can see that it's getting heated up right now. What's your view on the overall startup ecosystem? And you've started one yourself as well.
No, I think it has been a secular trend. Startups have, so as an ecosystem, we have been breaching new milestones every year. We have been hitting new peaks every cycle. When we started in 2008, 9, 10, that was the time we were creating first set of internet companies in India. They were generating a lot of GMVs, but not as much of profit and bottom lines. To a point where in last 5 years, Udaan became a unicorn in less than 3 years. And Freshworks became profitable at a $200 million revenue run rate. So we have come a long way. Things are only looking positive. To give you a perspective, I think when we were investing in Flipkart, one of the questions we were discussing was that this company will require at least 20 million to grow to a meaningful scale, and who will give that kind of money? And that was a serious question. 5 years later, that became a norm. And today, if you tell somebody about it, it is probably something we can all ridicule about. So I think we have come that far. And I think what sounds outrageous today or outlandish today will become a norm in 5 years, and then in 10 years it will look too small to aspire for, and that's how how fast it has grown. So I'm pretty bullish and very optimistic about how things are going to look like. I think I typically tell people who are working in startups that look, in less than 10 years there will be at least 1,000 executives in Indian startup ecosystem who would be paid more than like $500,000 in salaries. That practically means there will be 300 CTOs who will be paid more than $500,000. There will be at least 100 CPOs who will be paid more than $500,000, right? So I'm that optimistic about this ecosystem, and that's how far we still have to go. And that would sound very outrageous or outlandish today, but in 5 years it won't sound so much, and in 10 years it will look like people will not believe that is going to happen.
No, that's a music to ears. I'm on my journey to start my own, and we have a lot of aspirations within our setup as well. So that's really. I mean, I'm very excited as well. I keep telling people, and especially people whom we're looking to hire, that people always want to look at risk, right? And I said that next 10 years there'll be at least more than $50 billion companies which will get created out of India. So somebody's going to make it big, and we are probably going in that direction. But assuming we don't, somebody else will. So as an employee, you'll always have a bit for that, right? Because there'll be people lining up to hire, for those kind of salaries, and the experience will be very useful.
Absolutely. I think we are stone throw away from creating our first hackathon. Like we have done a few decacons, but I think we are less than 10 years away from seeing like multiple hackathons in India.
Which will be the first one according to you? You want to pick a name?
I think no, it's too early. I think some of them are already created, but like most of them are yet to be created, or they're very early.
Okay. But so coming to that interesting point in terms of which specific sector you think those, I mean, decacons are getting created, but the hectacons, which any specific area you see which you think is a lot more potential for a country like India?
So I think consumer internet had been the hero of the show for last 10 years,
Yep.
and a little bit of fintech. Fintech got some positive momentum, and I think they will continue to do well. I think India will produce one or two very large global consumer digital company in coming years, and I'm sure one or two have already started today. They exist today, and they will become that large. And but I'm more excited about the new trend, which is around SaaS and EdTech, because unlike previous generation startups, these are sectors which are also creating a lot of bottom lines. So India is notoriously known for large GMVs but very tiny bottom lines. But I think in SaaS and education, we will create companies which will generate very hefty bottom lines. And among all of these, I'm most excited about, like, across sectors between consumer, SaaS, and EdTech, fintech. I'm most excited about the global opportunity built in India for the world. And I see like hundreds of large companies getting created, iconic company like TCS is one of the great examples. People don't respect it so much in RE circles, but I think they have created a large iconic company. They have become the largest IT services company globally by, and we will see a lot of those category defining global market leaders coming out of India in coming years. That is a big opportunity, and it will not only happen in technology. I think we will see a larger spectrum of innovation coming out of India. So all these tech startups happened because IT outsourcing became very large in India, and globally it has happened in the same way. Like South Korea was the back office for cosmetic manufacturing, and a lot of brands started coming out of South Korea then. Similarly, India had IT outsourcing, and hence we created tech startups. But guess what? India is not only outsourcing tech, right? It is outsourcing legal services, healthcare services, marketing services, content creation. And after 20 years of talent building, there will be companies which will come in the form of startup and sort of take over the world. And thankfully, India has been a little bit flat in terms of movement of technology and people. So hence, our companies are able to go global faster than everywhere else because we didn't build barriers for US companies and vice versa. They didn't build barrier for the. So that's a great thing that India did at a design level, and that we will all benefit from it. More than that, I think there are two other trends. So global tech is what I'm excited about. Outside that, I think India will also topple SaaS paradigm on its head. We will either create companies which will like be 1/10 of the pricing at what SaaS is today, or practically launch free SaaS in some ways by which we are monetizing through surveys. Think TCS with a free software along with it, right? And these kind of paradigms will be very interesting to see in coming years.
Well, actually, that's a very interesting point, and you brought in about TCS, and for that matter, Infosys as well. They were the bellwether of the Indian tech industry because they were such a big recruiters across the campus. I think a lot of people started doing engineering, started studying engineering, and or specifically maybe computer science as well, which created a huge amount of bench strength on the engineering side. And I think which is what probably is coming in handy when you're talking about those SaaS models and creating at a cheaper cost, probably. Uh, and we are seeing some of the great successes. Postman is probably one of them, the recent ones, but I'm sure there are tons of it, and all those lying in your database as well. Coming back to the Indian consumer tech itself, and you said it, we all know that generally people don't pay, so the revenue is always an issue. You always have eyeballs, you have the gross sales, but you never have the net revenue. Do you see that changing with this whole ed tech coming up, or people start paying up now, or what is it? What do you think?
So I think for SaaS and EdTech, I think the payability is high. But I think even for large consumer companies like Flipkart or Swiggy or Zomato, I think it's a matter of time. As consumers get richer, they will start generating a lot of bottom lines. I think we are all like 5 to 10 years too early there. But if we can sustain this momentum for 5 years, they will make a lot of money. I think there is no doubt that Indian consumers will get rich over time. And when they get rich, they will spend money here. So I think we just have to make sure that all of these iconic companies just survive that.
Survive.
But I think education is one area where Indian consumers have traditionally overpaid their affordability. So hence they are seeing profitability before everybody else. I don't see a reason why Zomato and Swiggy will not make money in 10 years.
That's true. And, they're for sure they're creating entry barriers because it actually requires a lot of money to set up such a large scale. I mean, I come from a small town called Bhilai, and, there there is already Swiggy and Zomato has used this whole COVID situation and started operations there. So it's there in every nook and corner of the country now. So I would agree. Let's rewind back to your career itself. And you've been an engineer. You started, I'm assuming, as a techie on yeah, Yahoo and all those companies, and then started doing become part of the venture funding ecosystem by joining Excel, and now you started your own. And how you want to reflect back on the journey? I mean, how did that came over? Was it thought through, or you just took the life as it happened?
So my journey has been a lot of serendipity. None of these things were forward looking, and they happened with a lot of coincidence. They were like, even at job at Excel, it was not. I didn't When I joined them, I did not know that there exists a concept called venture capital, and you can actually go and raise money. We never knew that concept. I just left a job and I wanted to start something, and then one of my friends was funded by them, and they said to me that you should meet them once. And then I met 2-3 times, and then I realized that there's something very interesting happening. Their actually fund was fully deployed, so they didn't have any fund to invest, and they were not actually hiring. But somehow things worked out, and I ended up joining them. And I think that next fund was raised like 6-7 months after that. So it was a lot of serendipity, a lot of openness to ideas, and like taking a punt when something is interesting. And I'll maybe rewind and start from beginning. Like I grew up in Jodhpur in a conventional Marwadi family. Um, and some of people who would know, like these are families which are very close knit, live next to each other, a lot of cousins. So it was a fun experience growing up. But I was more academically aligned in early days. Before going to college, I was like by far ahead of everybody in studies. Was top 100 ranker in my cohort. Went to IIT Kanpur, computer science. But college was fun. Almost no study, all fun. It was a very different experience. And then I joined Yahoo after college, and Yahoo was like crash course of internet businesses across the globe. So Yahoo had 200 business units at that time. It was larger than Google. They were trying to buy Google at that time. That was how large it was. And they would generally have these business capsules where like one business unit head would tell about their business, and you practically learn the entire internet in like 18 months. And I also started machine learning practice for them in 2003. Um, Again, after that, 2006, I worked with Amazon. This was the time Amazon launched AWS, and everybody thought Jeff Bezos has lost it by launching something so different, and retail was losing a lot of money, right? So you sort of see how things are unsure even when you are creating like generation-defining innovation. Right? You will get pushback, people will ridicule you, and that's all right. And I think he's somebody who has sort of defined a lot of thought processes within the company. And then I left actually to start a company, and that is when I met Excel, and that really transformed my outlook and how I looked at life. And there again, like after joining, within 6 months, Flipkart thing happened. So it took us a while to get the deal through, but I think I kept pushing for the deal. Eventually, like 12 months down the road, it happened. And then I left. I wanted to start again, and I thought it was too like I was 27 when I joined. I left at 27. My Flipkart deal got done, so I thought I'm too young to sort of get into this now. So I wanted to give entrepreneurship another shot. I started Urban Touch, which was backed by Tiger and Excel, and it was a short 2-year stint. And 2013 we started. Me and Neha started Traction together, and this is 7 years down the road. We are 600 plus people now, customers across like 40 countries. And I kept doing Angel on the side. So after Excel, Angel was just naturally kept happening. And my first Angel deal was Delivery. So I think that gave a good positive start to it. So, and then over last 10 years, I did quite a bit of deals.
Interesting, Abhi. Actually, a couple of things I want to pick on what you just told us. So we were told that, your parents actually dissuaded you guys from starting your own company. You want to touch upon that? I mean, apparently only when they saw that, a guy like Ratan Tata investing in your venture, and they said, okay, now it's okay. Now you can start. Is that true?
So partially. So in my case, like my dad would always encourage me to start something. So every time I left a job, I left Yahoo, he said that, oh, are you going to start something? Then when Flipkart happened, he said that, oh, this is a great company. You should start something like this. They send books home. That's incredible.
Oh, the dad looks like very well ahead of your time.
I was my family, like all my cousins are businessmen, so there was some sort of peer pressure as well as encouragement from parents in general. But yeah, otherwise, are always unsure what you're doing. And then once Mr. Tata invested, then for a family, it's a huge validation. Like he's not somebody you would think that you would ever meet, and then you suddenly not only meet, they end up investing in your business. That's incredible. So I met him directly. It was a 90-minute meeting. He asked a lot of questions directly. I think practically he drove all the meeting, and then he ended up investing. So that was like peak of our all the aspirations in some
This is
way.
into traction, right? Or
This is into traction, yes.
okay, maybe do you want to tell a little bit more about the meeting?
2014-15 was a time frame when he started investing in startups, and then it was a fanboy moment for all our cohort founders, right? So everybody started reaching out, and it took us, I think, three different fund managers or VCs wrote to him recommending us, and that's when he gave a meeting, I think. And but the meeting was directly with him. We went to Bombay in their office, I think. And then it was blocked for like 30 minutes, but it lasted for like 90 minutes. I was practically sweating at the end of the meeting because he probably asked me more questions than any other speech that I had given so far. And but he was very kind. He was very sweet. He told us that before you go, please take a picture because everybody wants one, and people are typically shy of asking him for a picture. But they gave a proper picture, which I think everybody cherishes eventually. I think he's probably like 50 years older than me or 40 years older than me, but I think his questions are more relevant than most people I've met. So it's incredible that he's up to speed with how things are moving.
Okay, interesting one. So, if Flipkart, I mean, then let's spend some few minutes on Flipkart because that was such an epic investment, and you got associated at the very beginning. Has you being part of Amazon framed your thinking that this could be something big? Was that one of the thing which was driving, or what's the context to the whole investing, or did you knew the guys earlier, the Bansals earlier, or
Right. So I think I was at Amazon and Sachin and Vinny were at Amazon during the same period. I think it was a small office. We were like 150 people. They were on a different floor. So I didn't know them directly, but I'd heard about their names and there were like some close common friends between them. When I joined Axel, I think because of Amazon experience, I would know if Amazon is so big, somebody will create Amazon for India. At that time, it was clear, it is a popular saying that Google of India is Google, Facebook of India is Facebook. But there was some inclination to believe that Amazon of India may not be Amazon. And it is at least debatable because it requires a lot of operations. Amazon has not come to India, and we had been talking about it in 2006 at Amazon, and it felt like they're at least 5 to 10 years away. So we felt that even if they come, they will take a while to come, and hence there may be an opportunity to build something. It did drive me at least to believe that somebody can be funded there. But I think even more important than that, I think when I met them through eventually, the customer reviews were insane. Like everybody would buy a book and shout about them on Twitter. I have never seen that kind of frenzy before that. Every friend of mine I would meet, they would crazily, like they would just, it became the talk of every party. I went at a senior's home and he said that Flipkart is like ATM for books, right? You swipe your card and then books keep showing up at your doorstep, right? So I think it was a frenzy. So it was there. We knew that something very special is happening here. And the bottom up signal was very, very strong.
when you're making an angel investing, you're actually taking a bet on the guy, and of course on the thought ideas as well, but usually, or most importantly, it's a bet on the person whom you're putting your money. When you meet guys like Sachin, Binny, I mean, these are very early now. Sachin is Sachin and Binny is Binny, but at that time, they were just one of the guy working at with you or colleague at Amazon, or somebody just done worked at Amazon, right? What do you see in them? I mean, you funded or you've invested in a couple of them. What do you make out of them?
So I think uh, when I met Sachin and Vinny for the first time, I think they were still operating out of their apartment. There is a colony called National Games Village in Bangalore. Uh, they were two-bedroom house. They would in the morning they would take out their furniture, start their warehouse there, and pack stuff, and then by evening everything goes inside back. And then there were like five people who would help them pack, right? So this was how small it was, and they were like maybe 24, 25, somebody. you would come very positively, pleasantly surprised by their decisions, actions. So they would do things which you will say, oh, that makes a lot of sense, and somebody should be doing that. And even in case of Sahil delivery, I think you could meet him and feel that he's somebody who is a very bar raiser. That he has a lot of highs in his career, lot of character and gravity in character. So you would you would feel that that you have met somebody who is a bar raiser. But outside team, I look at a couple of other things. One very important thing is that I always ask that whatever they are creating today, will this thing exist in 10 years? Right? 10 years back, 15 years back, you could say that somebody will create Amazon for India. Either it will be Amazon or it will be somebody else. This thing will exist for sure. That is the first, then you know that this company will exist. They will not create, somebody else will create it, or what kind of team will create it, that's debatable, but this thing will exist.
So
Second,
that's about the business, right? I mean, whether you think the business is going to exist, so either them or somebody. But what do you think when you look at the person specific? Because founders are special, and they will decide who's going to be winner or not. Do you have a framework or any mental model, or you look at their mental model in terms of how do they look at things, or how do they surround themselves with what kind of people?
So I think two things I have seen stand out. So once you meet them, they are doing a lot of things which are where they are raising bar, right? So they are doing something which will you will come home impressed after every conversation. They would have taken some decision which looks interesting, or they have done something which has not been done before. So you will come home and say it was a very positive meeting at the end of every conversation. And secondly, I have seen that good founders are typically able to articulate their stories in an interesting way. How did they discover this idea? They will be able to frame a story which sort of sticks. If you hear Zomato story or Freshworks story, or all these people are able to stitch something very interesting. So I have broadly used these two frameworks. And do I come home impressed every time after I meet them? And are they able to sort of articulate their thoughts in a very interesting manner which sort of sticks? But broadly speaking, if you meet in a founders, when you come home, you know you have met a bar raiser. He's somebody who is unlike everybody else that you met before. So they clearly raise a bar.
Your first funnel is probably the industry and what they're looking to do, and then you look at how impressive the team is that the way you go about?
So team is always the team is the first. I would not back a team which I don't like in an interesting market. So I think team is the first one. So I have to feel that
Okay.
this is the bar raiser team. But I have still a lot of questions on the market which I would always take answer for myself before I jump in.
We are trying to set up something on the wealth management side, and we get to a lot of people have are going through various stages of their investing life, and usually people tend to focus around public markets as well, because even the private space is very limited and not accessible. But we've started seeing some bit of a democratization through either angel list or some of the stuff. How do you see or advise people? How should they look at what stage of their investing life should they start looking at investing in private space, including angel investing, and then how should they go about it?
It's like grass is greener on the other side. So I think people who have not been investing in private market feels that this is where all the gold is. But I think I always tell people that it's a very very difficult asset class to get it right. So I tell people if you're investing, put all your money into debt mutual funds, put all your money into equity index funds, allocate a small part of money. This is like your what should I say, lottery budget, or
Yeah,
don't
risk
put more
capital
than,
or whatever. Yeah.
so don't put more than 10% of your AUM there. And even then, I think I tell people that look, if you are somebody who is in middle of the ecosystem, if you are a founder or if you are a product manager at a or a CXO at a startup, you probably know the ecosystem. So it is okay to take some bets on directly. But otherwise, I'll tell people that if you have enough liquidity, go and just invest in a top tier venture fund. Um, However, the SEBI requirements are pretty high, so you need to put at least 1 CR as a commitment to each fund. So that makes it prohibitive for retail investors typically. You can try some deals at AngelList maybe, but it's very easy to invest in 20 companies and have nothing come back. So I would definitely caution people around getting inside unless they understand the system.
No, you're right. And, we always associate probably you with some of the successes, but like say, do you want to give, how many companies one invest and then how many companies actually become okay and how many companies generally become successful?
Well, I think it's very high power law. I tell
Mhm.
people that if I invest in 100 companies, probably 70 of them will not return the principal. Top two companies will return 90% of the capital. So unlike other asset classes where it doesn't is not that skewed, you can only go so wrong. This one is very lopsided in terms of return. So if you're serious about it, you have to probably spend 4 or 5 years before you start getting a sense of what's going to work.
But since we are in this topic, the title of my podcast is Breaking Investment Stereotypes, and we keep doing that. And there are a lot more in to do in the public market, but within the private space, do you have any kind of a stereotype you want to talk about or bring it up so that our listeners can learn from it?
No, I think private market is very unique in that way. So in every profession, you need to, as you gain experience, you figure out the patterns that these kind of things work, these kind of things don't work. Startup ecosystem is all about consciously putting in effort to make sure that you're not built a bias. So the more you learn, the every new bar raiser company will look different than the previous one. So every few years, you have to go back and start analyzing if you have built some bias. So for example, one of the common biases is that, oh, single founders don't make it. Rupeek is a single founder company and they have done exceptionally well for me. Delivery was a 5 founder company. People say that 2 is good, 3 is too many, and 4 is a clear no-no. But they were a 5 founder company. They did exceptionally well. So I think unlike other investment classes, this is an asset class where the more biases or more patterns you mind, there are higher chances that you will miss out on interesting companies at the end of it. People used to say that VCs are funding only IT background companies or IM background founders. But guess what? Like the largest company in consumer is just like Paytm. Vijay is not a top tier founder. In SaaS, Girish is running the largest company. He's not from top schools. In EdTech, Byju's is the largest company. They are not from a top tier background. In consumer, Oyo, Ritesh is not from a top tier background. Startup or early stage investing has been all about trying very hard to not build a stereotype. And the more you can, like, it takes a lot of effort to not build biases and hence not miss out on a winner.
Coming back to India, I mean, we know our public markets are typically still very old, businesses. And of course, some of the businesses are have come up in the last 10 years, but keep reading in newspaper that, some of those companies are going to go public. How different the public market will look in the next 5 years when all these companies are going to be listed, like Zomato's of the world, or, Flipkart, or all those?
No, I'm personally looking forward to that day. I think I feel that this year can be the year when a lot of these companies cross that threshold and actually start going and list themselves. And I do feel in next 5 years, if market continues to remain a little bit stable, I think we'll see at least 10 to 20 companies from startup world will come and list themselves, because I feel that public market has been welcoming for these companies and they are giving reasonable multiples. If not like 20, at least 10 large tech companies will go and list themselves in coming years. And I think it would just open up the floodgates, because it's always the first benchmark, like first milestone is the hardest. When everybody sees that people around them are able to do it, they will just like, so I would expect that that happens and a lot of these next set of companies will come and start listings. And even from public market bankers, we are seeing a lot of inbound among startups, right? So a lot of cohort founders are getting calls from these bankers saying that, look, if you want to go public, this is the time we can go public now. So I think I'm very excited about what 2021 holds for public listing for startups. I hope the reality meets the expectation.
So let's probably switch gears and talk a little bit about your personal life as well. Both you and your wife has been 40 under Fortune 40. You want to talk about that? I mean, and how does that feel?
It's always exciting to see some recognition for all the grunt that goes on day-to-day basis. People don't realize from outside that it's an incredibly tough journey, and I tell people don't get inside unless you are really sure you want to do it. because there's no turning back. Once you start a company and it crosses like 100 people, it's very hard to sort of hold it and come out of it. So it's always good to get some recognition. It was special because it included both of us. Uh, but I think, yeah, uh, uh, but I'm like not always, I'm not a awards person. I can keep myself happy, respected. But it's good to get recognized publicly. It's good for like employees to feel that they are in the right company. It's good for family to know that things are fine. They are not just wasting their time.
You brought interesting topic on giving space, and I want to bring your, you and your wife work together, run this company together. It's always a very tricky situation when you are spending all your time with the same person at home, outside home. You want to speak about that?
So we both knew that there is a stereotype against married founders. So we were actually very cognizant of that, and we almost for 6 months we both convinced each other that why don't you let me do it and you just do something else. And Neha was just graduating from Stanford, and I was telling her that look, you can probably get a very high-paying job and a good corporate career, or even go to a fund and do a great job. And she was doing the same thing that look, you have done the Flipkart deal. Why don't you go and join a fund and I'll do this? And at then the 6 months, we realized that if we are so passionate about it, we would rather want to do it together rather than. So if it was not for any other idea, we would probably have not done it together. And because we were so aligned on building this company, I think there were lesser challenges. And the other thing was that in we had our roles were like very clearly divided. So we had very little overlap in terms of what functions we were running, and we probably never had to sort of look into each other's territory a lot. So that also made it slightly easier. And we both come from very common backgrounds. So she is also IIT computer science programmer. She has worked. We both work for funds, so our networks are all common. So we have a lot of common friends. So that was it was a easy transition. But typically tell people that unless you are both really want to do this idea, don't do it together, because there is a unique downside to this. Maybe 300 days out of 365 you will be down, right? So things would look very difficult. And then when you're doing it together, actually you are in always in sync. So instead of supporting each other, you actually amplify the positivity and negativity. So that's a unique challenge which I didn't foresee it when we started. But I think because we both really really wanted to do this idea, it wasn't as hard as I was like we were worried about initially.
Okay. Yeah, that's it's very interesting, and I'm sure you only know when you do that. But I found that really interesting, and I'm sure that should give a lot of comfort and inspiration to people. Some of the people who are actually looking to do that, husbands and wife. So you said you've invested in tons of companies. Any particular one? Do you want to bring it up and say that you're really excited about, or?
Those, I think I would probably leave the obvious ones out because Flipkart delivery,
Mhm.
Rupee, they have already scaled out,
Mhm.
and like Rupee is still like pre-unicorn time, but I feel that that company will change how banking ecosystem do lending with consumers. I think they are building a unique way of working there, and people just see it as a gold loan company, but I think they will span across a lot of asset classes and fundamentally redo how lending is done for consumers. So it's very exciting from that perspective. It is a category changing company, and I still feel that it is 20 to 30 times more from here that they can go. Then Airmeet is a young and very exciting story. So Lalit was earlier founder of Common 4. I was on their board through Excel at that time, and he started Airmeet. He said that look, it just doesn't make sense for people to travel from Bangalore to SF to attend an event. Uh, there should be an event where people can log in online, and that's how it started. And they grew pretty quickly. I think during that, and they started, and within 4 months, lockdown happened. So that company was being designed for lockdown, and they are doing pretty well. They are scaled very, very well. He's the second time founder. Their last company got bought by Quicker. They had raised money from Tiger and Axel before that. So he knows how startup ecosystem works, and he has come up across a idea which is mammoth in my opinion. And I won't be surprised if they can do like $1 billion revenue in their lifetimes. I'm sure there are still a lot of ifs and buts in the story, but if everything goes well, the bull case is very strong for them. Secondly, I'm very excited about Yulu. They're one of the few startups which are also sort of social in nature. So they are building the first mile and last mile infrastructure using electric bikes or cycles. It's somewhere between cycle and a bike. So it's a low weight mobility thing. So they are, I think, if they succeed, I think they will fundamentally change how much uh, fuel do we burn? And I think there's another company in gaming which is doing very well, but it's still under the stealth mode. So these are few I'm really excited about.
Any learning from companies which probably will not see light of the day in your portfolio? I mean, is there a common denominator which makes them what, or doesn't give them the success which they probably should have?
Oh, absolutely. A lot of my companies die during the year when funding's like every 3 years, there will be 2 quarters when the investment money dries up. And I see a lot of very good companies get caught on the wrong foot, and then they are companies who are they have been building momentum for fundraise, and then suddenly their runway shrinks quickly, and then a bad event would happen and the fundraise would dry up. They are not able to put their things together and survive through that 2 quarter period. So I think that is one of the biggest reason that has been. So you don't, whatever you do, you don't run out of money. Right? Just make sure that you are using money more very, very conservatively. People do this again and again. Just before fundraise, they will start putting marketing dollars behind to show the growth, and it doesn't pan out the way they thought, either because of market condition or sometimes because of their own fault, or more often than not because of market condition, and uh, it doesn't end well. So I generally tell people that look, it's all right. You don't have to show like 30% growth, month-on-month growth. It's okay to do 10%, but make sure that you don't run out of money. That's the main thing.
Let's talk about any in terms of your life, who has been the inspirational figure behind whom you look at, either personally or on in the investing side, or professionally when you're running your own company?
So I think in terms of decision making, I have probably gotten most inspired from Jeff Bezos. He taught everybody about long-term thinking, being bold, being like doing mega ideas, regret minimization. So I think he has a lot of frameworks in life which can help you decide. I left Excel because I remembered one of his quotes about regret minimization, that 10 years down the road, what will you regret not trying? And it was clear that India is going through a lot of transformation, and there's an opportunity to create a iconic company, and I would definitely want to give it a shot. So Jeff Bezos has been one who has been inspirational. I think on investing side, I think I respect Warren Buffett a lot. I think again, he thinks about long term and then power of IRR, which is how a lot of decisions were made. So I see them as people who have inspired me a lot.
And you've done your company for some time now, and you've been having a great career so far. In terms of giving back, and being, you also invest in a lot of companies, um, how do you are you do you look at mentoring founders? What's your thought process around that? I mean, do you want to touch upon that?
I think I see angel investing as both investing and in some ways giving back. I think angel investing comes with some mentoring to founders, but I think I feel that it's a sweet spot of investing with high return. Yet it is also somewhat philanthropic in nature. You feel good about that you are changing the world for better. So I think and it has a lot of learning. It has a lot of drama. So it is like one asset class packed into all this. Like it has entertainment, it has philanthropy, it has in return. So it is a lot of fun.
For sure, is very interesting, and that's probably a way to give back, right? You know that not every investment is going to do well, but having made whatever wealth you created through that route, I think that's the best way. If you can induce a lot more entrepreneurship, create a lot more entrepreneurs like deliveries and of those world, I think there's nothing more probably satisfying than them, right?
Yeah, it's a lot of satisfaction at insane return. Like a lot of these companies can return 100 to 500x on my initial investment. So what else do you want? You want philanthropic feeling, you want return, and there's so much to learn, get inspired from them, so much you can share with them. So it's everything all put together in one.
Yeah, I mean, we are coming to the close of our conversations. Any of your favorite books you want to talk about?
So I have two category of books that I really like. So one is my collection of yoga books. I have like 5, 6 books that refer regularly, and that has made most positive impact in my life. I think I tell people that look, your fitness will play a bigger role, and all the functional skills are the strategy that you're learning. And you don't appreciate it till you cross like maybe 35 or 40. So that is my most cherished collection. But on business side books, I love Trillion Dollar Coach. I have read it recently, and it is something which resonated with me a lot in terms of how to think about people, how to mentor them, how to coach them.
Great guy, and he's actually coached so many people. What he has seen at those sitting on those board seats, it's amazing. You want to closing remarks, or you want to talk about you've had a interesting life so far with your ups and downs?
Right. So I think one of the things that worked out well for me was that I joined an internet company in 2002,
Yeah.
and it was the time when dot-com bust had happened. Um, it was among the lower paying jobs. So I was in computer science. Everybody probably got like 2-3 times more salary than this job, and I like this was the only job I got. So I it's not like I had a lot of options, but that was the best thing that happened to me, and because this was a sunrise industry. So I tell all the people that look, don't look at a job based just on how much they pay today. See if this is the industry which is a sunrise industry, and that made all the difference in my opinion.
No, I think that's a great way to close this session. We most of us have been very successful because we've been there at the at the right place at the right time. We grew up in financial market when actually Indian financial market was growing up. You've been part of the tech revolution, which we are seeing right now unfolding in front of us. So uh, so I think yeah, thank you so much, Abhishek. It was really interesting to talk to you. Thanks for sharing all your thoughts and reflect upon what you've done so far. Thank you.
Thanks, Raj. Good. Thanks for calling me, and big shout out to Mayank for introducing us. And
Absolutely. Mayank is a, I was asking Mayank that, is there anything you want to tell me which I can ask Abhishek? He said, what I know, you cannot ask on those podcasts. So I said, then leave that. Yeah.
thanks, Raj. It was good to be here today. Thanks a lot.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Ek minute, let me just stop the